When did you last cry?
Oh God, who knows? Last week, probably.
When did you last change your mind about something important?
I'm changing my mind about things all the time.
When was the last time you lied?
Everybody lies. But I'm pretty damn careful about it.
What is most important to you in life?
Not being stupid.
How would your life...
Not making foolish mistakes. Not being incautious, yeah.
That's tough on yourself.
Life's tough, man.
Right. How would your life have been different if you'd been born female?
Multiple orgasms.
It's not a bad one. What's your biggest regret?
That I didn't take advantage of the opportunity to learn to play the organ when I was 7.
And finally, how would you like to be remembered?
As someone honest.
I'm not doing this, and that's that. I'm not using the words that other people require me to use, especially if they're made up by radical left-wing ideologues. If they find me, I won't pay it. If they put me in jail, I'll go on a hunger strike.
I feel like I'm doing quite well in my career, but I still have pressures. People who are saying, you know, when are you actually going to succeed properly by having a baby?
Yeah.
I kind of find that slightly offensive. I'm 38. I feel like I've got through my early 30s without almost luckily, when I look at what my friends have to deal with their children, I almost feel a little bit blessed. What do you say to that?
Well, I would say that it starts to get pretty lonesome in life after 45 if you don't have a family, you know, and so it's easy to consider the utility of an intense career, and like you have a very high quality career too, you know. That's something that marks you out from let's say more typical people, and perhaps that's worth more of a sacrifice. But you know, you're going to live till you're 90 in all likelihood, and it's not easy to consider your life across its entire span.
Talking to a journalist in Slovenia who was a lefty and not a very sophisticated one, and she was talking about the 1%. And I said, well, do you know that if you make more than $32,000 a year that you're part of the 1%? She said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, that's the worldwide statistic. It's like, so you're part of the 1%. Well, she didn't. First of all, she said, well, I don't believe that statistic. And I thought, well, that's fine. You can go look it up yourself. But what was so interesting was that for her, that characterization, the 1% victimizers, was only relevant within the confines of her national border. Right. As soon as I said, well, no, it's all you have to do is expand that out a little bit and you're the problem and not the solution, then that was completely untenable for her.
Exactly.
She couldn't include herself in the population of victimizers, even though, you know, she lives in a Western country and she's a well-paid journalist and lives a very privileged life, so to speak, by historical and world standard.
Why you strike me as angry, and I wonder why you're angry.
I guess I'm not sure why I strike you as angry.
You don't feel angry?
At the moment? Not
well,
particularly.
okay, generally?
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, most of the places that I go, look, I can tell you what my life is like. You can tell me if you think this would be a life that would make you angry. Okay, everywhere I go, I'm stopped by people, and they'd like to tell me why their life is substantially better since they've encountered my work. And so you imagine what your life would be like if everywhere you went, what people did was come up to you and thank you because what they did helped you not commit suicide and get out of your addiction and stop being alcoholic, and that things are much, much better, and that they're often in tears. It's not something that makes you angry, it's something that makes you hurt.
It's not making you angry now?
I say banned, although technically I have been suspended. But the suspension will not be lifted unless I delete the hateful tweet in question, and I would rather die than do that.
I think you're using...
Wait a second here. What do you think women wear makeup for? Come on, if you're going to go after me on this,
Okay.
People say, well, women wear makeup to feel better about themselves. Why makeup? Why facial makeup?
I'll tell you why I wear makeup, which is to stop the comments that I would get if I didn't wear makeup. And my gender, I always say my gender is low maintenance, right? I don't feel particularly like a woman inside. I don't really know what that would mean. But what I try and do is try and look, you know, in the same way that you get black women who talk about the problem with natural hair, is it's seen as unprofessional, right? And as a woman, if you don't wear makeup, that is seen as a political choice. That is seen as something that, you know, you are...
So you wear makeup to protect yourself from what? From tyrannical men?
No, but tyrannical women as well, I would say. I think women very harshly judge each other's appearance, and there are very good reasons for that.
Probably because they've learned that from oppressive men.
No, I don't think so.
Why do you think it is, then?
I think that women are encouraged to be seen as being in competition with each other.
Encouraged? You don't think that there's anything about that that's natural, eh?
Well, I would be reluctant to get into that because I think you could talk about intersexual competition. I think that's a very big deal among the social sciences and evolutionary science. It's not my particular competence.
When I counsel my clinical clients who are depressed or anxious, one of the things I've always told them to do over the last few decades is to disconnect themselves from the news. This was before the social media.
And you still believe that today?
I haven't watched mainstream television news since like 1985.
If I come to your place, your TV's not going to be on CNN.
There's no TV.
There's no TV in your house?
I haven't had a TV since 1985. I realized back in 1985 that news wasn't news. If it was only news for a day, it wasn't important. And I've had depression since I was 13, probably, and very severe. And I've treated it a variety of ways, some of them quite successfully. But it's been a constant battle, and my father had it, and his father had it, and it's all just rife in my family. And my wife has autoimmune problems in her.
When you say depression, define it.
How would you define it?
Because that's a blanket term.
Yeah. Well, imagine that you wake up and that you remember that all your family was killed in a horrible accident yesterday.
You would feel that even
all
if nothing was wrong.
Yes, yes.
Just
It's
dread.
actually worse than that.
Really?
Well, one of the things Michaela told me was she thought, well, what's it like to be depressed? Imagine you have a dog and you really love the dog, and then the dog dies. And then about 3 years ago, our dog died, and that was Michaela's dog, and she really liked that dog. And she said, that was bad, but it's nowhere near as bad as being depressed. And I asked her too at one point when she was about 15 or 16, I said, look, you've got a choice, kid. Here's the choice. You can either have depression or arthritis. Which one? I'll take the arthritis. Well, that was after she'd lost 2 joints. So it was no joke. It's no joke, man. How much socioeconomic success are you willing to sacrifice to spend time with your kids before they're 3 years old?
Right.
Well, the answer to that shouldn't be none. Right? Because what makes... Look, we already know this. For example, once you make enough money to keep the bill collectors at bay, so that's kind of lower, upper working class, say something like, even centrist working class, keep the bill collectors at bay. Additional money doesn't improve your quality of life. Other things do. So maybe it's a rational response when you're like 30. See, the irrational men, here's the irrational men. Maybe they drive the world, but they're the irrational men. More success is always better along this unidimensional axis of achievement. Well,
Gordon Gekko, greed is good.
Well, there's a tiny percentage of men who are hyper competitive along those single axes of competition. And maybe they drive most things. They probably do. But that doesn't make them right. It also doesn't make them most people. And this is specific advice for parents. If you have your children in a school and they talk about equity, and there's class, and they talk about equity, diversity, inclusivity, white privilege, systemic racism, any of that, you take your children out of the class. They're not being educated, they're being indoctrinated. And there's absolutely no excuse for it. Trump is an anomaly, in my estimation. He isn't a typical Republican. He's quite bombastic and assertive. He's not a typical conservative. In fact, he wasn't a conservative, I don't think, at all.
He's a registered Democrat,
well,
I think.
yeah, and he's got an entrepreneurial bent as well. And entrepreneurial types tend to be liberal.
Well, that's what he sold himself on, I suppose, as president.
Well, he is an entrepreneur. He's an author. He had a successful TV show. He's had his real estate dealings. And you can quibble about how successful he was at some of those things. He was certainly successful on TV. And so he's got an entrepreneurial temperament. So he's a strange person. He's an idiosyncratic person. And the one thing I would say in his favor, as far as I'm concerned so far, is that he has not embroiled the U.S. in an additional stupid war. And that's happened a lot in the last 15 years. And the fact that that hasn't happened so far, I'm quite happy about. I'm not a pseudoscientist. So my publication record puts me in the top 0.5% of psychologists. So I'm not a pseudoscientist by any stretch of the imagination. And I have 10,000 citations. And that's not a million, but it's a lot. And 100 published papers. So let me lay out one of the personality differences between men and women, because it's worth understanding. And you might say, well, there can't be personality differences between men and women because that's anti-feminist. It's like, no, it's not. We might have to actually understand that there are differences between men and women so that we can let men and women make the choices they're going to make without subjecting them to undue manipulation. Okay, so one of the reliable differences between men and women cross-culturally is that men are more aggressive than women. Now, what's the evidence for that? Here's one piece of evidence. There are 10 times as many men in prison And what's that, a sociocultural construct? It's like, no, it's not a sociocultural construct. Okay.